My fiancé stole my family. Heirlooms after cheating with a doctor, so I destroyed his career and left her broke, jobless, and completely alone. I am a 36-year-old male civil engineer working at a mid-sized firm, and until recently, I was engaged to Andrea, a 31-year-old female. We had been together for 4 years, living in my house for 3 of those. I bought the place after my dad passed away, using the money he left me for a decent down payment on a 3-bedroom home in a solid neighborhood. It's nothing fancy, but the mortgage is manageable, and the yard is big enough for the dog I always wanted but never got, because Andrea claimed she was allergic. I grew up in a blue-collar family. My dad was a plumber, and my mom was a school secretary. They worked hard to put me through engineering school. My dad always drove an '89 Chevy Silverado that he maintained himself, and he taught me how to change the oil when I was 12. I still drive my 2010 Tacoma that I bought used with 80,000 miles on it. Andrea always complained it was too old and not professional enough for client meetings, but I refused to go into debt for a status symbol. When my dad died from a heart attack 5 years ago, I promised myself I would make something of the opportunity he'd given me. I got the job, bought the house, met Andrea at a friend's wedding, and thought I was set. Andrea works in pharmaceutical sales, pulling in around $85,000 plus commission. Between us, we were doing well, not rich, but comfortable. We had the wedding planned for next summer, and had already put down $4,000 in deposits. Her parents were covering most of it, but we were contributing what we could. There were signs that things weren't right. For instance, when I got that promotion last year and took her out to celebrate, instead of congratulating me, she spent the whole dinner asking if I'd be getting a company car or an expense account. When I said no, she just said, "Oh," and changed the subject. Then there was the time I came home with groceries, and she completely lost it because I bought store-brand cereal instead of the organic stuff she wanted. It turned into an hour-long argument about how I never listen and don't care about her health over cereal. Things started changing about 6 months ago. Andrea's client dinners became more frequent, and she'd come home late smelling like cologne, claiming it was from hugging clients goodbye. I found receipts for restaurants I knew we couldn't afford on a regular basis. When I brought it up, she got defensive, saying I was being controlling about her money. Then there's Joseph, my buddy since college. He works in IT at the hospital where Andrea has a lot of clients. He started acting weird around me, canceling our weekly basketball games and avoiding eye contact when we did hang out. I should have seen the signs. My birthday rolled around last month. I took the day off, planning to relax at home with my cat, Max. Adopted him from a shelter 3 years ago, and he's a one-eyed orange tabby that Andrea tolerated but never liked. Max had been faithfully following me around the house since the day I brought him home. That morning, while I was making coffee, Andrea made a big show of giving me a wrapped box. "Don't open it until tonight," she said, kissing my cheek quickly. "I've got a dinner meeting with the regional director, but I'll be home by 10 o'clock and we'll celebrate." I nodded and set it aside, thinking, another meeting? Whatever. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, I was sitting on the couch, Max purring on my lap, when I figured I'd go ahead and open it. Inside was a black hoodie with our favorite band's logo. Nice enough. There was a small card that said, "Check the pocket." I reached into the pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a receipt this time, but a goodbye note. "Victor, I can't do this anymore. The wedding, the house, the whole future we planned. It's not what I want. I found someone who makes me feel alive again. By the time you read this, I'll have already moved my essential things out. I'll get the rest later. I'm sorry it had to end this way." Just like that. 4 years were over in a pocket note on my birthday. I sat there holding that note for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My mind was racing, trying to piece together all the signs I had ignored. The late nights, the sudden work trips, the way she'd started guarding her phone, and how she'd begun picking fights over nothing, probably to justify what she was doing. Just 2 weeks ago, she'd made a backhanded comment about my truck when her colleague pulled up in a new BMW. "Maybe someday we'll upgrade to something from this decade," she'd said with a laugh, linking her arm through mine. I brushed off her comment like it was just a joke. Her colleague had smirked, and I felt like I was back in high school, being sized up and found wanting. I called her straight to voicemail and texted with no response. I went to our bedroom and noticed the closet door was open. Half her clothes were gone, and her jewelry box was missing. I sat on the edge of the bed with Max rubbing against my leg. At least someone in this house was still loyal. I cracked open a soda and sat on the couch, staring at the walls. That's when I remembered something. Our shared cloud account. I grabbed my laptop and logged in. Jackpot. Andrea wasn't exactly tech-savvy. She didn't realize our photo backup was syncing automatically from her phone. There they were, dozens of pictures of her with some guy, tall, gym-built, expensive suit type, at restaurants, in a cabin, and somewhere on a boat. Based on the timestamps, this had been going on for at least 4 months. Then, buried in a folder labeled Weekend Getaway, I found a photo that made my blood boil. Andrea and this guy were standing in front of my car, the car I let her use because her lease had ended, clearly using my vehicle for their little escape. I dug deeper and found text message backups. The guy's name was Dorian, a doctor at the hospital where she did sales calls. Typical. The texts were nauseating. She told him how bored she was with me, how she couldn't wait to start her real life with him once she figured out how to leave me without drama. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Joseph. "Dude, I need to talk to you. It's important." I called him immediately. "What's up?" There was a long pause. "I've been seeing Andrea with someone at the hospital a lot. I didn't know how to tell you." "Dorian," I said flatly. "Yeah, when did you first see them?" Joseph sighed. "About 3 months ago in the cafeteria. They were pretty close. I thought maybe it was just a work thing at first. Then, last month I saw them in the parking garage kissing. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Why didn't you say something sooner?" I tried to keep the anger out of my voice. "She saw me watching them that day, came to my office later, and said if I told you, she'd tell HR I was harassing her. I could lose my job, man. I've got the twins and Jen to support. I was going to tell you anyway. I was working up to it, but I'm sorry. It's not your fault. She's gone now anyway. Left me a note on my birthday." Jesus Christ, what are you going to do? "I don't know yet, but I'll think of something." The next day, I called my dad's old friend, who's now my insurance agent, and canceled the wedding insurance policy. When I explained why, he just sighed. "Son, I've got to call your dad's brother. He'll want to know." 2 hours later, my Uncle Paul was on my front porch with a 6-pack of drinks, Dad's favorite when he was alive. "I had to do this for your cousin Tyler last year," Paul said, handing me a drink. "Better a busted engagement than a busted marriage." We sat in silence for a while. "Your dad would have handled this the same way you are," Paul finally said. "Just quiet dignity and a clear head." Coming from him, that was the highest compliment possible. Speaking of handling it, I took a week off work to get some things done. First, I changed all the locks. Then, I went through our finances. We had a joint account with about $12,000 in it, mostly my money from a recent bonus. I transferred it all to my personal account. Next, I called our wedding venue and photographer, explained the situation, and asked if I could transfer the deposits to my name only. The venue manager, Diane, was surprisingly understanding. Then, I put together a folder with screenshots of all the photos and texts I'd found, neatly organized by date. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but it was important to have ammunition. Every night that week, I stayed up until 2 or 3 in the morning, digging deeper. I combed through hospital staff directories, cross-referencing faces until I found Dorian's profile. A chief neurosurgeon from Harvard Med. Picture perfect. I created a spreadsheet tracking when Andrea's late meetings lined up with his surgery schedule. I found his LinkedIn, noting curious gaps in his employment history. I accessed Andrea's Instagram activity through our shared iPad and documented every interaction between them going back 6 months. On day 4, Andrea finally called. "Victor, we need to talk about the rest of my things." "No, hello, no, how are you?" "No, sorry for leaving you a freaking note on your birthday." "Your things are fine. I'll come by tomorrow around 6 to pick everything up." I changed the locks. "You what?" "I can't do that. Half of that house is practically mine." I laughed. "Really? Your name isn't on the deed. It isn't on the mortgage. You've never paid a property tax bill or a homeowner's insurance premium. So, please tell me which half is yours. We're engaged. That makes it." "We were engaged. Past tense. Just like how you were faithful. You were honest. You were going to marry me. All past tense." She was silent for a moment. "This is so typical of you. Being technical instead of reasonable. You left me a breakup note in my birthday present and moved in with another man. Don't talk to me about reasonable." "Fine, be that way. My dad will call you about this." She hung up. Her dad called the next day. Thomas Whitfield, Esquire, informed me that his daughter would be by with a police escort to collect her belongings, and that I should expect to hear from his lawyers about the house situation. "Mr. Whitfield," I said calmly, "before you go making threats, you might want to ask your daughter about the contents of the cloud account she shared with me. Specifically the folders from the Lakeside Inn in March and the weekend at your family cabin in April. I'm happy to share those files with Mrs. Whitfield if necessary." There was a long pause. "I'll call you back?" He never did, but Andrea texted an hour later. "You're an a-hole. What time can I get my stuff?" We arranged for the following Saturday. She showed up with her younger sister Clara instead of Dorian. Smart move on his part. I'd spent the morning packing Andrea's things into black trash bags and cardboard boxes. When they pulled up, I was sitting on the front step with Max in my lap, not even looking in their direction. Clara had always been the opposite of Andrea. Quiet, bookish, and genuinely nice. She looked uncomfortable as she helped Andrea load boxes into her Range Rover. Another gift from Daddy. "Sorry about all this," she mumbled when Andrea was back inside. "Not your fault," I replied. She hesitated. "For what it's worth, I think she's making a huge mistake. Dorian's got a reputation. This isn't the first relationship he's wrecked." That caught my attention. "Oh, yeah, last year he did the same thing with a nurse, left his fiancée for her, then dumped the nurse 3 months later when he got bored." She glanced toward the house. "But don't tell Andrea I said anything. She thinks this is some epic love story. Your secret is safe with me." After they left that night, Clara called. "Victor, there's something you should know. Andrea took some things that weren't hers. I saw her pack that signed baseball your dad left you and the nice watch from your grandfather." "Are you sure?" "Positive," she said. "Since you kept the ring, she deserves something valuable, too." I hadn't even thought about the engagement ring, a 2-carat diamond that cost me nearly $15,000, almost my entire savings at the time. After we hung up, I sat in my dad's old recliner, the one Andrea had always hated and wanted to throw out, and started planning my next move. Taking my family heirlooms was the final straw. This wasn't just about a messy breakup anymore. I needed to know more about Dorian. Joseph was my way in, but I had to be careful given Andrea's threats against his job. We met at a diner far from the hospital where nobody would recognize either of us. "His full name is Dorian Chamberlain," Joseph said, sliding a coffee toward me. "Neurosurgeon, early 40s, makes around $800,000 a year, divorced twice." "Twice? Andrea knows this?" Joseph shrugged. "Doubt she cares. You should see the car he drives, Maserati, custom suits, the whole 'I'm rich and important' package. The hospital must love him. That's the thing, they don't. He's good at his job, but he's on thin ice with administration. There have been complaints about his bedside manner, how he treats nurses, plus some rumors about prescription stuff. I can't really talk about prescription stuff. Let's just say some medications go missing on his shifts. Nothing proven." I nodded slowly. "Anything else I should know?" That's when Joseph told me about a nurse named Stephanie. He said she used to date Dorian and now works in the ER after transferring post-breakup. From what he told me, she might have some stories to share. Finding Stephanie wasn't hard. Hospital directory, a little social media stalking. Getting her to talk to me was the challenge. I stationed myself at the coffee shop across from the hospital and waited through 3 shift changes until I spotted her based on her profile picture. Mid-30s, blonde and tired-looking. I approached her and asked if we could talk. "Dorian Chamberlain?" Her face hardened immediately. "I have nothing to say about that jerk. He's with my fiancée now, or ex-fiancée." That got her attention. "Seriously? Let me guess. She works at the hospital?" "Sales representative." I nodded. Figured that's his type. Women who look up to him professionally. It makes them easier to control. She grabbed her coffee. "Look, I shouldn't be talking about this in public. I just want to understand what I'm dealing with." "Fine, 5 minutes." We sat at a corner table. She told me everything. How Dorian had pursued her relentlessly while he was engaged, promising to leave his fiancée, then finally did. 3 months later, he became distant and controlling, starting to accuse her of cheating when she worked late. When she finally confronted him about the pills she found in his locker, he threatened to ruin her nursing career if she talked. The man's a narcissist and possibly an addict, she concluded. But he's protected. His father's on the hospital board, so Andrea is just the latest in a pattern. Exactly. He'll love-bomb her, then discard her when he gets bored or when she discovers something she shouldn't. She leaned forward. "If I were you, I'd be thanking my lucky stars. You dodged that bullet. Your ex did you a favor. If you really want to hit Dorian where it hurts, focus on his reputation. It's everything to him." She stood to leave. "Good luck, and do yourself a favor. Don't try to warn her. People like that have to learn the hard way." As Stephanie walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Riverfront Cafe. Come alone. Andrea's father wanted to meet." This should be interesting. I arrived at Riverfront Cafe 15 minutes early and chose a corner table with my back to the wall, giving me a full view of the entrance. Thomas Whitfield was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate lawyer making 7 figures. Expensive suit, immaculate silver hair, and the confident posture of someone used to intimidating people. His confident stride faltered when he spotted me already seated, watching him approach. Good. He didn't waste time. "I want to discuss your evidence and how we can resolve this situation amicably." "The photos, the text messages, you mean? The photos of your daughter cheating on me for months? The texts where she plans how to leave me without drama? Or maybe the pictures of them at your family cabin?" He flinched slightly at the mention of the cabin. I had no idea they were using the property. Well, they were, very thoroughly, from the looks of the photos. He cleared his throat, glancing around to make sure no one could hear us. What exactly do you want? My father's signed baseball, my grandfather's watch, both of which she stole when she moved out. That's it. And the $4,000 in wedding deposits that came from my account. He nodded. I'll get your items back. You'll have them by the end of the week. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't approve of how she handled this. Her mother and I raised her better. As he walked away, I called after him. One more thing. Tell Andrea that if anything else of mine mysteriously disappears, those photos go to your wife, your partners, and anyone else who might be interested. 3 days later, a courier delivered a package to my office. The baseball, the watch, and a cashier's check for $4,000. No note, I didn't expect one. That evening, I got a text from Clara. Can we meet? It's important. We met at a quiet bar downtown. Clara looked stressed, fidgeting with her drink. What's up? I asked. Andrea doesn't know I'm here, but I thought you should know what's happening. She's miserable. Not my problem anymore. I know. But Dorian's showing his true colors already, controlling, jealous. He checks her phone and questions her about every male client. Last week, he surprised her by showing up at what was supposed to be a business dinner. Again, not seeing how this concerns me. Clara, aside, she's talking about quitting her job because he doesn't like her working with male doctors. She's giving up her career for this guy. She made a mistake, a huge, stupid mistake that she's too proud to admit. Why are you telling me all this? Because despite everything I know, you cared about her, really cared, not like Dorian, who just sees her as a trophy. She hesitated. And because I've always thought you deserved better than how she treated you. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I'm moving on with my life. I'm good, actually. Of course, she said quickly, looking away. I just thought you should know. As we finished our drinks, I found myself wondering why Clara had really reached out. Was it just concern for her sister, or was there something more? Either way, the wheels in my head were turning. I now had allies I never expected. Joseph at the hospital, Stephanie with her inside knowledge, and possibly Clara on the inside of Andrea's new life, plus whatever information Thomas might share. I needed to keep my wife from finding out about the cabin photos. Over the next few weeks, I set my plan into motion. It required patience, which I had plenty of now that I wasn't planning a wedding. The first step was reconnecting with Craig, a college friend who worked for the state medical board. During dinner, I casually mentioned concerns about a doctor I knew who might have prescription issues. I assured him I wasn't asking him to do anything unethical, just wondering what the process would be for reporting suspicious behavior. Craig explained that complaints were taken seriously, especially those involving controlled substances, and would trigger a review. He provided me with the details for filing an anonymous complaint, but warned me to ensure my concerns were legitimate. False reports could backfire badly. Next, I met with Stephanie again over dinner to dig deeper into Dorian's questionable behavior. She was quiet at first, but eventually opened up. It turned out she had found oxycodone that wasn't prescribed to him. When she confronted him, he fed her some nonsense about needing it for an old sports injury, but she knew it was way too many pills for anyone to actually need. She also noticed strange patterns at work. Sometimes he'd be super wired and focused. Other times, he'd disappear for half an hour and return looking completely different. Calm, with pinpoint pupils, classic signs. When I asked if she'd make an official statement, she shut that down quickly. Her career was on the line. However, she hinted that if someone were to tip off the right people, she wouldn't be upset about it. Meanwhile, I started hanging out with Clara more. She texted me updates about Andrea's disastrous relationship with Dorian, and we grabbed coffee to talk. During one of our meetups, she told me Dorian was throwing a massive housewarming party because Andrea had officially moved into his $1.2 million mansion in the affluent part of town. Clara rolled her eyes, saying Andrea wanted everyone to see their perfect life, especially since hospital bigwigs would be there, but their mom wasn't having any of it. The final piece fell into place when Joseph texted me. Dorian was scheduled for a high-profile surgery on the Monday after his big party, a senator's daughter with media coverage. Perfect timing. The night before the party, I filed an anonymous complaint with the medical board, detailing concerns about Dr. Chamberlain possibly being impaired during patient care, including specific dates Joseph had helped me identify when medication inventory didn't match usage logs. I included just enough verifiable details to warrant a serious investigation. Then, I contacted a friend who worked security at the hospital and slipped him $200 to keep me informed if anything interesting happened during Dorian's shifts the following week. I obviously didn't attend the party, but Clara sent me pictures throughout the evening. Andrea looked perfectly polished in a designer dress, while Dorian held court among his colleagues, and Andrea's dad schmoozed with hospital executives. Everything looked immaculate, expensive, and enviable. It was exactly what I wanted to see. The higher they climbed, the harder they'd fall. On the Monday after the party, Dorian performed his high-profile surgery on schedule, and everything appeared to go perfectly. What didn't make the news was that a random drug test had been ordered for all surgical staff that morning, part of a new hospital policy that mysteriously only affected Dorian's team. My security friend texted me Tuesday morning saying, "Doctor." C called an emergency meeting with the administration and left looking furious. By Wednesday, Joseph reported that Dorian was conspicuously absent from the hospital. By Friday, rumors were circulating that Dorian had been suspended pending an investigation. I waited. Patience was key now. The following Tuesday, Clara called me in a panic. "Victor, everything's falling apart. Dorian's license has been suspended. Something about drugs. Andrea's freaking out." I kept my voice neutral. "That's unfortunate. How's she handling it?" "She's in denial. She keeps saying it's a mistake and that someone's trying to sabotage him." Clara paused. She also found out about his ex-fiancée, plural. There were 3, not 2. It sounded like she was having quite the awakening. "It gets worse. The hospital board is meeting tomorrow to decide whether to terminate his contract. With the suspension and pending investigation, his malpractice insurance is threatening to drop him. If he loses his job, he loses everything." "Yeah, and Andrea's on his lease now, but not in any of his accounts. She put everything into this relationship, even used her savings to help furnish their place." I almost felt bad. Almost. 2 days later, the other shoe dropped. Dorian was terminated, and the medical board investigation was underway. According to Clara, he was spiraling, blaming Andrea for his bad luck, drinking heavily, and becoming verbally abusive. "She finally sees him for what he is," Clara told me over yet another coffee meeting. "But she's trapped. She's afraid to leave because he's becoming unstable, and she has nowhere to go anyway. Dad offered to help, but she's too proud to admit it." That night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, my doorbell rang repeatedly, captured by my newly installed security camera. I saw Dorian swaying on my porch, clearly drunk. I chose not to answer. He rang again, then started pounding on the door, shouting incoherently. I calmly called the police, recorded the entire incident, and filed a report the next morning. 3 days later, I discovered my mailbox had been damaged. The day after that, I noticed one of my truck tires was slowly losing air. I didn't react. Instead, I quietly upgraded my security system, adding cameras to cover every approach to my house and meticulously documented everything. The following evening, my doorbell rang around 9 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I checked the security camera, I saw Andrea standing there, her makeup streaked down her face. I debated not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want?" I asked through the intercom. "Victor, please, I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, blocking her entry. Andrea looked terrible. "You were right," she blurted out. "Dorian's not who I thought he was. He's been lying about everything, his finances, his past, even his medical issues." "And this concerns me how exactly?" I replied, feeling irritated. "I made a horrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life," she said, her voice cracking. "I had everything with you, stability, honesty, real love, and I threw it away for her. For what? Some fantasy that fell apart in months." Again, she didn't see how this was my problem. "I need help, Victor. Dorian's losing everything. His license might be permanently revoked. The condo is going into foreclosure because apparently he's been leveraged to the hilt. He's drinking constantly and becoming scary. Last night, he shoved me into a wall." "Sounds like you should call the police, not your ex." I started to close the door. "Wait." She put her hand on the door. "I have nowhere else to go. My parents are out of town, and Clara's place is too small. I just need somewhere to stay for a few days until I figure things out." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're joking, right? You want to stay here after what you did?" "I know I don't deserve your help, but you're the only person who's ever truly cared about me." I stopped her. "Just stop." The woman I cared about wouldn't have left a coward's note in a birthday gift. She wouldn't have taken family heirlooms out of spite or moved in with another man without a second thought. "I was confused," she protested. "Dorian manipulated me." "No, you made choices, adult choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." Her face hardened, and that familiar entitled anger surfaced. "So that's it? You're just going to leave me with nowhere to go after 4 years together? Funny how that works, isn't it? By the way, how's Dorian's career going? Heard he had some trouble recently." She stared at me, realization dawning. "It was you. You reported him." I shrugged. Someone had to stop an impaired doctor from operating on people. Think of it as my public service. You ruined his life, his career, everything we had. "No, his addiction and dishonesty did that. I just made sure the right people were watching at the right time." I leaned closer, and for what it's worth, I had help. "Turns out there are plenty of people who've been hurt by you two. Clara, for instance," I whispered. "She's been feeding you information. And that nurse, Stephanie. People don't like being used and discarded, Andrea. Something to keep in mind for your next relationship." The next day, Dorian showed up again, pounding on my door, clearly drunk at 11 o'clock in the morning. I didn't bother opening up, just called the police and watched through the security camera as they escorted him away, threatening to arrest him for trespassing and public intoxication. I added the footage to my growing documentation file. Andrea tried a different approach, sending her father to negotiate. Thomas Whitfield looked uncomfortable standing on my porch. "Victor, I understand there's been some unfortunate developments with Dorian's situation." "Very unfortunate," I agreed. "Addiction is a serious disease." "Yes, well, Andrea finds herself in a difficult position." "She certainly does," I replied. He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm aware that you and she have a complicated history, but she's in a vulnerable place right now. And as her father, I'm concerned about her safety and well-being." "As you should be," I said. "I'm wondering if we could come to some arrangement. A temporary truce, if you will." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of arrangement?" "Andrea needs somewhere stable to stay until Dorian's situation resolves, or she can find her own place. Your house has the space, and you two were close once. You want me to take in your daughter after she left me for another man? The same daughter who stole family heirlooms and claimed half my house despite contributing nothing to it?" He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I felt embarrassed. I knew it was an unusual request. Unusual, more like delusional. But here I was, prepared to make it worth your while. "How does $20,000 sound to let her use your spare room for a month or two? No strings attached." I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you trying to buy me off to clean up Andrea's mess?" I asked. "I'm trying to protect my daughter. Where was this concern when she was destroying my life? When she moved in with a man you knew was still married when they met?" Thomas paled slightly. "How did you know that?" I shrugged. Dorian was still legally married to his second wife when he and Andrea started dating. I did my homework, Mr. Whitfield, just like I looked into his prescription habits and professional misconduct. He was quiet for a moment and then asked, "What do you want, Victor?" "Nothing from you or Andrea. I just want to be left alone to rebuild the life your daughter shattered." As he turned to leave, I added, "For what it's worth, Clara tried to warn her multiple times. Maybe you should start listening to your younger daughter. She seems to be the only one in your family with a moral compass." The next few weeks brought more desperate attempts at contact. Andrea sent tearful voicemails, and Dorian, when sober enough, sent threatening texts that I documented and forwarded to his lawyer. Thomas tried again with a higher offer, $50,000 this time. I declined it, just like all the others. Eventually, they all got the message. Andrea moved back to her parents' house, tail between her legs. Dorian, facing criminal charges for prescription fraud on top of his license suspension, reportedly left town. The perfect couple crashed and burned in spectacular fashion, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. Andrea's Instagram, once filled with perfect couple photos and luxury lifestyle shots, shifted to vague inspirational quotes about forgiveness and starting over. Her friends from the hospital slowly stopped interacting with her posts. Comment sections that were once filled with fire emojis and declarations of couple goals went eerily quiet. According to Clara, Andrea had been crashing with different friends each week, wearing out her welcome with her neediness and drama before finally admitting defeat and moving home. Former colleagues stopped returning her calls. The pharmaceutical company where she worked placed her on administrative leave after Dorian's drug issues became public knowledge. They couldn't have a sales rep linked to prescription fraud, even by association. For a woman whose entire identity had been tied to status and appearance, this was the ultimate fall. As for me, I kept the house, got that dog I always wanted, a rescue lab, mix named Cooper, started playing basketball with Joseph again, and fixed up my Tacoma with a new sound system and wheels. Max the cat eventually accepted Cooper, and the three of us settled into a comfortable bachelor routine. Occasionally, I meet Clara for coffee, just as friends for now. She's nothing like her sister, and that's the highest compliment I can give. I sold the engagement ring. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone suffer. It's watching them realize too late exactly what they threw away, knowing that you've finally moved on to something better. It's been 6 months now. Life has a weird way of working out. Cooper, my lab shepherd mix, is snoring at my feet as I write this. Max is perched on the armrest of my dad's old recliner, keeping his usual watchful eye. The best decision I ever made was keeping both of them. They don't care about my earning potential or whether I drive the right car. Work is going well. I got promoted to project lead last month. The overtime I put in after the breakup actually paid off. As for Andrea and Dorian, the aftermath was even more satisfying than I expected. Dorian's license suspension became permanent when the investigation uncovered that he'd been writing prescriptions using other doctors' DEA numbers. He's facing criminal charges and will likely never practice medicine again. Last I heard from Joseph, Dorian filed for bankruptcy and moved back to his hometown in Ohio. The $1.2 million house was foreclosed on, and his Maserati was repossessed in the hospital parking lot. A moment that reportedly became legendary hospital gossip. Andrea tried to salvage her pharmaceutical sales career, but her reputation was tarnished by association. Plus, selling to doctors gets complicated when you're known for sleeping with one who lost his license for drug issues. She eventually found a lower-paying position at a smaller company, a significant step down from her previous role. Last week, I drove past her in my freshly detailed Tacoma with its new wheels. She was driving her dad's old Honda, a far cry from the Range Rover. Our eyes met for a brief second at the stoplight. I didn't react at all, I just drove on. That moment seemed to hit her harder than any insult could have. Thomas had to deal with his own fallout. It turned out the cabin photos got leaked somehow. Not by me, I swear to his wife. She was furious that he'd been covering for Andrea's affair, especially since Dorian had been a family friend. According to Clara, her parents had the fight of the century, and Thomas ended up sleeping in his office for a whole month. Speaking of Clara, remember those coffee meetings? They've now turned into dinner dates. We've been taking things at a glacial pace. Both of us are hesitant for obvious reasons, but there's something genuine between us that I never experienced with Andrea. Andrea found out about us 3 weeks ago when she happened to stop by her parents' place and saw us, having dinner with them. The meltdown was epic. There were accusations of betrayal, and she screamed that I was just using Clara to get back at her. The whole dramatic scene unfolded. Clara, whom I had always seen as the quiet one, shut it down with 5 simple words. Not everything is about you. I've never been prouder of anyone. The irony isn't lost on me. Andrea threw away a solid relationship for a fantasy that ultimately imploded, while I found something real with someone who had been right there all along. Her parents have been surprisingly supportive of us. I think they see it as some kind of karmic balance. So that's it.